When my wife told me she wanted to open our marriage, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She believed she could explore, have her fun, and still come home to a husband who would wait for her. But what happens when the tables turn? What happens when the man she thought would always be there decides he's done playing the fool? This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of regret, of choices that can't be undone, and of revenge served in the coldest way possible. Before we begin, subscribe and tell me, would you have forgiven her? I just feel like I've outgrown monogamy, she said, swirling her wine glass like we were discussing vacation plans. We love each other, but don't you ever wonder what else is out there? I swallowed, feeling something crack inside me. Are you saying you don't love me anymore? She sighed, reaching for my hand. Of course I love you, baby. That's why I want to do this. I don't want to feel trapped, and I don't want you to either. This could be freeing. Freeing. The word rattled around in my head like a bullet casing. I looked at the woman I had built my life with, the one who promised forever, and realized she had already made her decision. I was just being given the illusion of choice. Have you been with someone already? My voice barely masked the betrayal brewing underneath. She hesitated, a flicker of guilt flashing across her face. No, but there is someone I've thought about. I should have been angry. I should have thrown my glass against the wall, stormed out, made a scene. But instead, I sat there, feeling the slow, creeping death of the life I thought we had. She had already mentally checked out of our marriage. She was just waiting for me to catch up. Who's he? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She bit her lip, and that alone confirmed it. Jason, her coworker, the man she always talked about a little too much, the one whose texts made her smile at her phone like a teenager. I swear nothing happened, she insisted, reading the accusation in my eyes. But I think if we had an arrangement, I could explore things without guilt, and so could you. There it was, the hook. The "so could you" part meant to soften the blow. She was throwing me a bone, thinking I'd be too blinded by my own possibilities to see what was really happening. But I wasn't stupid. You need to think, I said, pushing back from the table. She didn't try to stop me, she didn't fight, she just let me walk away, which was maybe the biggest betrayal of all. I spent the next week pretending everything was fine. I kissed her in the mornings, made small talk about dinner plans, watched as she dressed a little nicer for work, and when she came home later than usual, I didn't ask questions, because I already knew. I saw it in the way she looked at me, like a woman who had moved on but still wanted to keep the security blanket of marriage wrapped around her. And I let her believe I was naive, that I would be the good, supportive husband, willing to let her have her fun. She wanted to open our marriage, so I did. I knew exactly who to call. Lena. She was an old friend, someone who had always lingered at the edges of my life, gorgeous, confident, and more importantly, interested. I had turned her down in the past because I was married. But now my wife wanted freedom. I met Lena for drinks, just like my wife had done with Jason. I laughed at her jokes, let my fingers brush hers on the table. I let her lean into me, her perfume drowning out the bitterness in my chest. And when she whispered in my ear that she had always wondered what it would be like to have me, I let her wonder no more. That night, I didn't come home. I didn't leave a note. I didn't answer my wife's texts. I let her sit with the silence, just like I had. And when I finally walked through the door the next morning, she was waiting. Where were you? Her voice was tight, her arms crossed. I shrugged. Out. Her eyes darkened. Out where? I took my time setting my keys down, stretching out the moment like a blade against her skin. With someone. The color drained from her face. You actually... What? I tilted my head, feigning innocence. I thought that was the whole point. We're free now, right? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Whatever she thought she wanted, it had never included this. She had expected me to sulk, to be the patient husband who waited while she explored her new desires, but I had flipped the script. She had handed me the gun. I just pulled the trigger first. She stood there, arms folded, her breath uneven as if she was still processing the shock. My response had shattered her illusion of control, and I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to decide how to react, how to justify this without exposing her own hypocrisy. She started, then stopped herself. She took a slow, measured breath, as if calming an internal storm. I didn't think you'd actually do it. I let out a humorless chuckle. Oh, you thought I'd just sit at home and wait for you to screw Jason? I tilted my head, watching the way her fingers twitched as I said his name. You gave me permission, remember? Or was this only supposed to be a one-sided deal? Her mouth tightened. That's not fair. I took a slow step toward her, closing the space between us. What's not fair? The fact that I played by your rules? Or the fact that you don't like seeing me enjoy the same freedom you wanted? She flinched, and for the first time I saw the flicker of regret in her eyes. But it wasn't enough. I needed her to feel it. I needed her to drown in it. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking smaller than before. Who was she? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled. Lena? Her breath hitched, and I saw the recognition dawn on her face. She knew Lena. She knew how beautiful she was. More importantly, she knew Lena had always wanted me. Lena, she repeated, as if testing how the name felt on her tongue. So she swallowed. You slept with her? I took my time answering, enjoying the way her world crumbled with every second of silence. Yes. Her eyes flickered with something between shock and pain. How was it? I leaned in, letting my breath graze her ear as I whispered, liberating. She exhaled sharply, stepping back as if my presence was suffocating her. I watched as emotions warred across her face, jealousy, anger, maybe even heartbreak, but she had no right. She had asked for this. I need some air, she muttered, turning away before I could see the tears pooling in her eyes. I let her go. She didn't bring it up again for 2 days. Instead, she walked around the house like a ghost, quieter than usual, her smiles forced, her laughter hollow. She thought I wouldn't notice, but I did. She was unraveling. On the 3rd day, she came to me while I was making coffee. Can we talk? She asked, her voice hesitant. I stirred my mug and took a sip before answering. About what? She shifted on her feet, wrapping her robe tighter around herself. About us. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Sure. What part of us are we talking about? The part where you wanted to sleep with someone else? Or the part where you didn't expect me to do the same? She flinched at my bluntness but didn't back down. I don't know if this is what I really wanted. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? And what changed? She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time in years I saw fear. Not fear of me, but fear of what she had lost. You're different now, she admitted. You don't look at me the same way. I tilted my head. How am I supposed to look at you? She blinked rapidly, as if struggling to hold back her emotions. Like, you love me. I smirked. You wanted an open marriage. Love had nothing to do with it. Her breath hitched, and I saw the first real tear slide down her cheek. That's not fair, she whispered. I scoffed. You keep saying that, but what's really not fair? That you wanted to explore and now don't like the consequences? That I didn't beg you to stay faithful? I leaned in closer, my voice low and lethal. Or is it the fact that I moved on faster than you expect? She let out a shaky breath, her shoulders trembling. I made a mistake. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. No, you made a choice. And so did I. I let that sink in before I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, shattered and alone. The real revenge began after that. I didn't stop seeing Lena. In fact, I made it obvious. I started dressing better, coming home late, smelling like a woman who wasn't my wife. And every time I walked through the door, I saw the way my wife's eyes darkened with regret. She tried to act unaffected at first, playing the supportive, understanding wife, but the facade cracked faster than she thought. One night, as I was getting ready to leave, she stood in the doorway of our bedroom, arms crossed tightly. "Are you going to see her?" she asked. I glanced at her briefly before slipping on my watch. Yes. Her jaw clenched. "So that's it? You're just dating someone else now?" I gave her a lazy smirk. "Funny, you didn't seem too concerned when you were about to do the same." She flinched. That was different. "Was it?" I challenged, stepping toward her. "Or is it only different because now you're the one being left behind?" Her lips trembled and she looked away. "I never wanted to lose you." I exhaled slowly, my expression turning cold. "But you were willing to risk it." She didn't have a response, because we both knew the truth. I walked past her without another word, leaving her alone in our bedroom, the same way she had once left me alone in our marriage. A week later, she snapped. It happened at dinner. I had just come home from a weekend away with Lena, and my wife sat across from me, barely touching her food. The silence between us was suffocating. Then, out of nowhere, she slammed her fork onto the table. "I don't want this anymore," she blurted out, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. I set my glass down, amused. "Don't want what?" Her breath came out shaky. "This. The open marriage, the rules, the distance. I don't want any of it." I tilted my head. "That's not what you said a few weeks ago." She swallowed, her lips parting as if to argue, but then she just exhaled. I was wrong. I let the words hang in the air, savoring them. She had played her hand, and I had won. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the table. "So what do you want, then?" She met my gaze, her eyes pleading. "I want us back. I want our marriage back. I don't want anyone else." I studied her for a moment, letting the silence drag. Then I gave her the final blow. "I don't think I want that anymore." The words landed like a punch to the gut. She sucked in a sharp breath as if I had physically struck her. "What? What do you mean?" I exhaled, leaning forward. "I mean, you were right about everything. Monogamy felt like a trap. I was missing out on something better." I gave her a small, cruel smile, and now I've found it. Her face crumpled, her entire body trembling. "No," she choked out. "You're just saying that because you're hurt. We can fix this." I shook my head. "We can't." She reached for me, desperation in her touch. "Please." I let her hand linger on mine for a moment, just long enough to see the hope flicker in her eyes. Then I pulled away, and just like that, she finally understood what she had done. She had opened our marriage, and in the end I walked away from it without her. I watched the devastation wash over her face, the slow realization that she had broken something that could never be repaired. I had seen that look before, on people who had gambled away their fortunes, on businessmen who had lost everything in one bad deal. She had placed a bet she thought was safe, and now she had nothing. "I love you," she whispered, her voice raw with desperation. I gave her a small, almost pitying smile. "I know." Her breath hitched, as if those two simple words hurt more than anything else I could have said. She reached for me again, but this time I didn't let her touch linger. I stood, pushing my chair back with a slow, deliberate scrape against the hardwood floor. "You wanted freedom," I said, my voice calm, measured. "Now you have it." She stared up at me, tears welling in her eyes, her lip trembling. "No, I don't. I don't want that anymore," I exhaled, shaking my head. "You don't get to take it back just because you don't like how it feels." She blinked rapidly, her chest rising and falling with short, frantic breaths. "We can fix this." I tilted my head. "Fix what?" "Our marriage," she pleaded, gripping the edge of the table as if it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. "We can go back. I'll stop everything with Jason. I won't even talk to him anymore. We'll go back to how things were before." I chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. "Before? You mean before you told me you wanted to sleep with someone else? Before you shattered everything we built together?" I let my words sink in before adding, "There's no going back." Her face twisted in anguish, and for the first time I saw it, the full, gut-wrenching realization of what she had done, the weight of her choices pressing down on her, suffocating her. "But I didn't actually do anything," she whispered almost to herself, like she was trying to convince herself she deserved another chance. I smirked, letting my words cut deep. "You didn't have to. The moment you thought about it, you made your choice." A tear slipped down her cheek. I thought it would be different." I nodded slowly, taking my time to let her wallow in her misery. "I'm sure you did." She reached up, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Is there nothing I can do?" I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "I don't think you understand, Ashley." Saying her name felt foreign, like I was speaking about someone I used to know, someone I had once loved, but who no longer existed. "It's not about whether you can fix this." I let the silence stretch between us before delivering the final blow. "It's about the fact that I don't want to." She made a soft, wounded sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob, before covering her mouth with her hand. I waited, watching her crumble in front of me, watching the regret consume her from the inside out. Then, without another word, I turned and walked away. The beginning of the end. The next few days were an agonizing descent for Ashley. I didn't need to do anything. The regret was eating her alive. She tried everything, leaving me little notes on the counter, making my favorite meals, even slipping into bed beside me in the middle of the night, hoping I'd pull her into my arms like I used to. But I didn't. I let her stew in the emptiness she had created. She stopped going out with her friends. She barely touched her phone, as if the very sight of it reminded her of the path that had led her here. Jason? She must have cut him off because she never mentioned him again. One night, she tried to seduce me. She walked into the bedroom in nothing but a silk robe, her hair loose, her skin glowing under the soft light of the lamp. She looked stunning, she always had, but she wasn't mine anymore. She bit her lip, her eyes filled with something desperate. "Please," she whispered, stepping toward me. "Let me prove to you that I still want you." I just stared at her, my expression unreadable. Then, slowly, I stood from my chair and walked past her without a second glance. That was the night I heard her cry herself to sleep, filing the papers. A week later, I filed for divorce. I didn't tell her. I let her find the papers on the kitchen table one morning, her coffee steaming beside them, as if it were just another ordinary day. I was in the living room when I heard the soft thud of her mug hitting the table, followed by the sound of paper rustling as she flipped through the documents. Then, silence. Complete, suffocating silence. A moment later, she appeared in the doorway, her face pale, her hands trembling. "You," her voice cracked. You're divorcing me? I didn't look up from my phone. Yes. She let out a shaky breath. But we haven't even talked about this. I finally met her gaze. We don't need to. Tears welled in her eyes. So that's it? You're just done? I sighed, setting my phone down. You made your choice. I made mine. She swallowed hard. I thought you'd at least try. I smirked. Like you did? Her lips parted, but she had no response. Because we both knew the truth. I stood up, walking toward her until there was barely any space between us. You wanted to see what was out there, I murmured, so go. She flinched, shaking her head rapidly. No, I don't want. I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping to a whisper. Her face crumpled. I walked away. Final goodbye. The day she moved out, it rained. Fitting, really. She stood by the door, her suitcase beside her, her eyes red and swollen from days of crying. She had begged me, God, how she had begged me to reconsider. But I didn't. She looked at me one last time, her fingers twitching at her sides. I love you. I nodded once. I know. Her breath hitched and she took a shaky step forward. If I could take it all back, I would. I tilted my head. But you can't. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Please. I exhaled slowly, my expression unreadable. Then finally, I gave her my last word. You lost me the moment you thought you could do better. She let out a broken sob. I opened the door, and this time I was the one who walked away first. Epilogue. Regret hits harder than betrayal. Months passed. I moved on. Ashley, though, she never did. I heard through mutual friends that she spiraled after the divorce. She tried dating, but nothing worked. No one ever lived up to what she had thrown away. I even ran into Jason once. He looked uncomfortable, to say the least. I smirked at him. She ever mention me? He swallowed hard. Yeah. I chuckled. I bet she did. Ashley had learned the hardest lesson of all. Regret is a crueler punishment than revenge. And I never looked back. I thought that filing for divorce and moving on would be the ultimate revenge, that watching her unravel in the wake of her own decisions would be enough. But life had other plans, and Ashley wasn't done suffering. The breakdown. I expected her to move on, to disappear from my life and find some way to cope. But she didn't. Instead, she lingered, like a ghost haunting the ruins of what she had destroyed. It started with late-night texts. Ashley, I miss you. Ashley, please talk to me. Ashley, I don't know how to live without you. At first, I ignored them. Then, when she showed up outside my apartment, drenched in the rain, mascara streaking down her face, I knew she had truly lost herself. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. Go home, Ashley, I said, my voice cold, detached. She shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself. I don't have a home. Not without you. I scoffed. You should have thought about that before you threw everything away. She took a shaky breath. I didn't throw it away. I just made a mistake. A mistake? I let out a bitter laugh. No, Ashley, a mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. A mistake is buying the wrong kind of coffee. I stepped closer, towering over her. What you did was a choice. She flinched at the truth, her lips trembling. I thought we could handle it. I narrowed my eyes. We? She nodded desperately. I thought if we had space, if we had options, we'd appreciate each other more. I tilted my head. And did you? Did you appreciate me more when you were fantasizing about another man? Her face crumpled and she let out a choked sob. No, I didn't. I only realized what I had after I lost you. I exhaled, running a hand down my face. Too little, too late. She took a step forward, placing a trembling hand on my chest. We can fix this. I grabbed her wrist gently but firmly, pulling her hand away. No, you broke this, and I don't want to fix it. She gasped, like my words had physically struck her. For a moment we just stood there, the rain falling around us, soaking into her clothes, making her look even more pathetic than she already was. Then, her face hardened. You're really not going to take me back. I stared at her, unblinking. No, she swallowed, her jaw tightening. So that's it? After everything we've been through, you're just done? I nodded. You made sure of that. Her breath came out ragged, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Anger, desperation, maybe even hatred. Then, she whispered, you'll regret this. I smirked. I already did, the moment I ever loved you. And with that, I shut the door in her face. Her last act of desperation. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Unknown, you should check your email. I frowned, my gut twisting with unease. I logged into my inbox and froze. There, sitting in my inbox, was an email from Ashley. The subject line, if I can't have you, no one will. I clicked on it, my hands tightening into fists as I read the message. I hope you're happy, because by the time you read this, I won't be here anymore. I can't live with this pain. I can't live knowing I lost the only thing that ever mattered. I loved you, and I still do, but you don't care. You never did. Goodbye. A cold chill ran down my spine. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the words, my heart pounding in my chest. Then, without thinking, I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door. The apartment scene. I drove faster than I ever had in my life, barely stopping at red lights, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. By the time I reached Ashley's apartment, my hands were shaking. I pounded on the door. Ashley, open up. No answer. I tried the knob. It was locked. My pulse roared in my ears as I stepped back and slammed my shoulder into the door. Once, twice. On the third try, it burst open. And then, my heart stopped. Ashley was on the floor, a bottle of pills spilled beside her, an empty glass in her limp hand. Ashley! I dropped to my knees, shaking her. Wake up! Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale. I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed 911. She took something, I don't know how much, but she's barely breathing. The dispatcher's voice was calm, giving me instructions, but I barely heard them. I lifted Ashley into my arms, cradling her as sirens wailed in the distance. I should have hated her. I should have left her to deal with the consequences of her own actions. But in that moment, all I could think was, she was mine once, and now she was slipping away. The hospital. The doctors managed to save her. She had taken enough pills to do damage, but not enough to kill her. They told me she had been crying when they pumped her stomach, that she had been calling my name. I stayed in the waiting room for hours, even though I didn't know why. And when she finally woke up, her eyes searching the room desperately, her face crumpling when she saw me sitting in the chair beside her bed, I knew. I wasn't there because I loved her. I was there because I needed to see this through to the end. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Don't, I said softly. Just rest. She swallowed, nodding weakly, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time in weeks, she looked at peace. Not because she had won me back, but because she knew, finally, that she had truly lost me. The aftermath. After she was discharged, I left. I moved to a new city, started a new life. I never answered her calls. I never responded to her texts. And slowly she faded from my world. But I knew, deep down, that she never moved on, that she would wake up every day knowing she had thrown away something real for a fantasy that never existed. And that was the cruelest revenge of all, because while I walked away stronger, she would spend the rest of her life drowning in the wreckage of what she had destroyed, alone, with nothing but regret as her only companion. Months passed, then a year, and just like that, Ashley became nothing more than a memory, one that faded a little more each day, like a photograph left too long in the sun. I moved on, truly and completely, not just in the superficial way where I pretended not to care, but in the way where I actually stopped thinking about her at all. I dated again, I traveled, I built a life that didn't include the ghost of my past. But Ashley, she never let go. The unexpected reunion, it happened on a random evening, a year and a half after the divorce was finalized. I was at a coffee shop, sitting by the window, scrolling through my phone when I felt it. That feeling. The kind that crawls up your spine telling you someone is watching. I looked up, and there she was, Ashley. She stood near the entrance, clutching a to-go cup in her hands, her face a mix of shock and something deeper, something darker. She looked different, not in the obvious way. She was still beautiful, still had that effortless grace about her. But there was something hollow behind her eyes, like she had never truly recovered. I exhaled, forcing myself to remain neutral. She hesitated, then slowly walked toward me. I didn't invite her to sit, but she did anyway. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she broke the silence. "You look good." Her voice was soft, hesitant. I sipped my coffee. "Thanks." She played with the lid of her cup, her fingers trembling slightly. I wasn't expecting to see you here." I shrugged. "Small world." She swallowed, glancing down at her hands. "How have you been?" I studied her. "Good." She nodded, as if she already knew that. "I heard you moved." "Yeah," I said simply. Another beat of silence. Then she let out a shaky breath. "I miss you." I had been expecting it, but hearing it still felt like watching someone bleed out in slow motion. I tilted my head. "Why?" Her lip trembled. "Because I was stupid." I didn't disagree. She inhaled sharply. I thought I wanted something else. I thought I was missing out." She shook her head, letting out a bitter laugh. "But it turns out the only thing I was missing was you." I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the table. Regret is a funny thing. Her eyes snapped up to mine, wide with desperation. "Do you ever think about us? About what we had?" I considered lying, but then I decided to give her the truth. She flinched, as if I had physically struck her. I watched her breathe through the pain, forcing herself to hold it together. "I deserve that," she murmured. I didn't respond. She swallowed again, blinking rapidly. "Would you ever—" She hesitated, as if afraid of the answer. "Would you ever consider—" I didn't let her finish. Her breath hitched. "Not even as friends?" I shook my head. "I don't need another friend." A single tear slipped down her cheek. I watched it fall, watched as she wiped it away with the back of her hand, trying to keep herself from completely breaking down. "I ruined everything, didn't I?" she whispered. I sighed, leaning forward. "You made a choice, Ashley, and choices have consequences." She bit her lip, nodding slowly. For a moment, we just sat there, staring at each other. Then I stood up. Her eyes widened slightly. You're leaving? I nodded. Yeah. She inhaled sharply, gripping her cup tightly. Will I ever see you again? I let out a small, humorless laugh. I hope not. And with that, I walked away. I didn't look back. Not once. Final epilogue. Closure. I never saw Ashley again after that, but I heard about her. Through mutual friends, through whispers of what had become of the woman who once thought she was outgrowing monogamy. She tried dating. It never worked. She tried moving. It didn't help. She even tried therapy, desperate to find a way to heal from the wounds she had inflicted on herself. But no amount of healing could change one simple truth. She had lost the one thing that had truly mattered, and she would spend the rest of her life regretting it. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after you walk away from something that was once everything to you. It doesn't come immediately, and it doesn't come easily. It's slow, creeping in like the tide, washing over the wreckage of what was and smoothing the jagged edges left behind. For a while I thought about her, not in the way I used to, not with love or longing, but with curiosity. I wondered if she had finally found what she was looking for, if she had ever truly come to terms with the weight of her own mistake. But the truth is, some mistakes don't get second chances. Some mistakes carve wounds so deep that even time refuses to heal them. And Ashley's mistake? It was the kind that left scars. I don't hate her. I don't think I ever really did. Hate would mean I still cared, that I still held onto some fragment of the past. But I let that go the day I saw her for who she really was. A woman who thought she could have everything without consequence, who believed she could play with fire and not get burned. She was wrong. She lost me, and in the end, she lost herself. I don't find satisfaction in her suffering. I don't smile when I hear that she still struggles, still chases after something she can never get back. But I also don't feel sympathy. She did this to herself. She asked for an open marriage, but all she got was an open void she could never fill. Some people learn their lessons and change. Others spend their whole lives regretting a single decision, a single moment when they chose wrong, and everything unraveled from there. Ashley became the latter. I moved forward. My life became something more than I had ever expected. Love found me again, but in a way that was different, real, steady, not something that could be discarded the moment curiosity struck. I don't compare her to Ashley. There's no need. The love I found was built on something stronger, something that couldn't be shaken by fleeting desires or selfish choices. That's what Ashley never understood. Love isn't about freedom to do whatever you want. It's about choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, even when temptation whispers, even when doubt creeps in. She let go of that choice, and I never gave her another one. Sometimes I wonder if she ever truly understood how final my decision was, if she really believed in those early days that I would take her back eventually, that I would wake up one day and forgive her, undoing the damage with a few kind words and a promise to move on together. She never understood that trust once broken doesn't heal the way people think it does. It doesn't grow back. It doesn't return, no matter how much you want it to. Once it's gone, it's gone. I think that's what destroyed her the most. The realization that no matter how much she begged, no matter how much she regretted, there was no way to erase the past. She had wanted the excitement of something new. And in the end, the only thing she gained was a lifetime of wondering what might have been. I don't wonder. I know. I know that the life I have now, the peace I've built, the love I've found, it's real, it's right, it's what I deserved all along. And Ashley? She got exactly what she asked for, but never what she wanted. Life has a way of closing doors you never thought would shut. Ashley was once the person I pictured standing beside me through everything. Life's highs, its lows, the moments in between that make up the fabric of a shared existence. I believed in forever with her. I built my world around the idea that no matter what came our way, we would face it together. But that was before she decided that commitment was a prison, before she convinced herself that she was missing out on something beyond our marriage, before she shattered everything with a single request: I want to open our marriage. I used to wonder if she ever saw the moment it all truly ended, not the divorce, not the last conversation, but the exact second she lost me. Was it when she admitted she had been thinking about another man? Or was it when she realized I had taken her offer seriously and found someone else? Someone who showed me what love was supposed to be? Or maybe it was much later when she sat across from me in that coffee shop, grasping at fragments of a past that no longer existed. I don't know, and I no longer care. The thing about regret is that it doesn't change anything. It lingers, suffocating, but it never rewrites the past. And for Ashley, regret became her only companion. I don't wish her harm. I don't wish her happiness either. I wish her exactly what she gave me: emptiness. I let go of the pain long ago, but I held on to the lesson. Love is not something you gamble with. Trust is not something you test. And loyalty is not something you temporarily set aside for a thrill. Because once you do, there is no going back. I walked away and never looked back. She never stopped looking back. That is the difference between us. That is why I won. Goodbye, Ashley. This is the last time I will ever think of you.